you're importing from China to Australia and you're not taking advantage of the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement, otherwise known as ChAFTA, then you are probably wasting a lot of money every single time you import. So what is ChAFTA? And no, it's not some new type of Pokemon, although if it was, this is what AI thinks it would look like. But ChAFTA is in fact a free trade agreement between China and Australia that came into effect in 2015, basically just designed to make imports and exports between the two countries cheaper and easier by either reducing import tariffs or eliminating them completely. So there's a whole host of goods that are covered under this free trade agreement. In fact, since 2015, 85% of goods imported from Australia to China are duty-free, and 95% of goods imported from China to Australia are duty-free. So how do you take advantage of this? Unfortunately, it's not something that happens automatically. You need to get a certificate of origin, otherwise known as a COO, or sometimes you'll hear people call it a COO. This is basically tells you what the goods are and where they originate from. It's like an official document, kind of like a birth certificate for your import. Congratulations. It's a box. The certificate is issued by the relevant authority in China, and it basically says to Australian customs, hey, these goods are covered under the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement. Unfortunately, if you don't have this certificate, then you'll still be paying import duties, even if the goods would be covered under the agreement. And anyone who's imported before knows that these extra import tariffs can really affect your profit margins, sometimes to the point where it makes it not really worth doing. So at this point, you might be thinking, all right, Andy, how do I get myself one of these certificate of origins then? Well, unfortunately, it's really difficult. To understand why more people aren't doing this, because it's so easy. In fact, I'd been importing for around about a year before I realized A, it was even a thing, and B, just how easy it was. And that's because you ask the exporter, aka your supplier, to organize it for you. And I don't even want to do the maths on how much I wasted before I realized this. So just before we do that, we need to check if your goods are eligible under the China-Australia Free Trade Agreement. Like I said, most of them are, so they probably are, but let's just check. You need to go to ftaportal.dfat.gov.au, and I'll put a link to that down in the comments below. Here we are. This is what the website looks like. So we're just going to search for spoons. And we're going to say we're importing to Australia from China, and then we search, and then under ChAFTA we're looking for, they fall under this here, so spoons, forks, ladles, skimmers. Just basic spoon is what we want to look at. And you can see here under ChAFTA it's 0% import duty on that, and it has been since 2015. So you wouldn't be paying import duties on spoons if that's what you were importing and you had a certificate of origin. If you didn't have your certificate, you would still be paying, and it's 5% for most items. So you'd be paying an extra 5% at customs if you don't have your COO. Like I said, most goods are covered. So let's just try it again with socks. And I'm hoping that's covered. Otherwise, I've just put my foot in it. Okay, so import to Australia from China. Pantyhose, tight stockings, socks. So yeah, that's the one. Goods as follows: pantyhose and tight socks. Yep. So let's have a look at that one. And again, under ChAFTA, see you're paying 0% since 2017. So initially that wasn't included in the agreement when it was first established in 2015. And it looks like 2 years later in 2017, they've added socks to the agreement. And I think that makes sense because I remember reading somewhere that initially like clothing and textiles weren't included, so that does make sense. But then obviously it's been added since 2017, so as you can see, it's a good idea just to check this website. If you're struggling to find your goods on the portal, you can ask your supplier for what's called a HS code, which stands for Harmonized System Code, I think, and it's basically a code which every sort of customs department for all the countries in the world will recognize. It's like a universal coding system. You can ask your supplier for that number, and while you're on it, you might as well bring up the conversation of, hey, I'm after a certificate of origin so that I can avoid paying import duties under ChAFTA. Ask your supplier. Most of them will already know what it is, and they'll be able to tell you just easy enough whether you can get one or not. And if your goods qualify, you can go ahead and ask your supplier for your COO, certificate of origin. And I have heard that some suppliers will try and charge you for this. I don't know how much it actually costs them to create one for you or apply for one for you. At the very least, it is a bit of extra admin for them to do. So I don't know how much it's costing them, but they might try and charge you like $50, $100, something like that. My average value of imports ranges between sort of 5,000 and 10,000. That's Aussie dollars. and my suppliers never tried to charge me for it, I guess because it's worth it for them. If you're importing a smaller amount of goods for a lesser value, they might say, hey, we can do that, yeah, but it's extra admin and it's going to cost you a bit. If that's the case, then you'll just need to do a bit of extra maths just to figure out if it's worth paying that extra fee. For example, let's say you're importing $2,000 worth of goods. So at 5%, you'd be paying $100 tax on that. And this is all US dollars here. So if they were charging you $100 for the COO, then it's probably not even worth it, because for the cost of the certificate of origin, that's all you'd be paying in import duties anyway. Let's do another example. Say you're importing $5,000 worth of goods. 5% import duty on that would be 250 US dollars. And let's say they were only charging you 50 US dollars for the COO. You'd be saving $200 by doing that, because you'd be paying them $50 for the COO, and then you're saving the $250 that you would be paying in import duties, because you'll now be paying no import duties. So you'd be saving 200 US dollars, which is about 300 Australian dollars. I don't know about you, but for me, that's worth it. I wouldn't mind saving 300 Australian dollars every single time I import. So it's definitely worth doing. I'd be saying, yes, please, I'll have a certificate of origin. If you like hearing little inside tricks of the trade like this one, then make sure you hit the subscribe button, especially if you're in Australia. It takes like 2 seconds to do, and every now and then you'll see a useful little video from me. Hey guys, just editing the video and realised I forgot to mention what happens with the certificate of origin after it's been created. So your exporter should provide this for customs along with all their other paperwork, but do check your invoice when you receive it from customs, because occasionally it gets missed. So check your invoice, and if you've been charged any import duties, so not GST but import duties, then give them a call and email a copy of your certificate of origin to them, just to make sure that that's included when they're calculating your customs invoice. Back to the video. This topic can be a bit tricky to get your head around, especially at the start. So if you have any questions, as always, drop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them for you, or if you need anything clarifying, or if you've just imported some goods recently and you're quite happy with that, then let me know in the comments how you've been getting on. On my previous video, somebody let me know that they'd just imported a whole bunch of soccer scarves or football scarves for their club, and they were quite happy with the amount that they'd saved by doing that. It would have cost them a lot more if they were buying from a local supplier, and it all went smoothly. So that's what we like to hear. Now, there are a couple more charges that you'll need to pay at customs. There's a clearance fee, which is basically like an admin fee. If you're using DHL or FedEx, for example, it's about $90. You'll need to pay 10% GST, which is on the cost of the goods and on the cost of shipping. Although if you're registered for GST, then you can obviously claim that back, so you're not really spending anything there. And if the total value of your goods falls under 1,000 Australian dollars, then you don't need to pay any import duties at all. You don't pay any GST, you don't pay any clearance fee. It just flies straight through customs. I go over that in more detail in this video here, so I'll see you there. Oh, yummy, good box, good box.